How's it going? Excuse me. So I was inspired to talk about the frustration around if you're experiencing stress and what is actual effectual or helps with that versus actually creates more stress. So I think anyone who's ever experienced stress, which is every single human being alive, we do not get rid of stress by someone telling us to calm down, okay? Or, like, I remember when I was pregnant and my OB-GYN had said to me, well, it's not healthy for the baby when the mother is stressed. And I'm like, well, that's one way to induce stress. Because when we know we're not supposed to be something or that it's ineffectual, like I said before, then we tend to ruminate on it, right? Because then it's like, oh my God, how do I not do this? So to tap on a previous video that I did on the what's and how's, right? Highlighting that someone is stressed is the what, okay? All right. So that's beneficial to a degree because then it brings mindfulness to it, right? Awareness to the fact that I'm stressed. Because sometimes we're just floating through life, honestly, and we're reactive and we don't even realize it until our environment mirrors that back to us. Or, and again, that depends on the level of insight we may have, or someone says something to you, like, you appear stressed, or however it may come through. So it's important to know the what, which is the I'm stressed, and then maybe even the why. Why am I stressed? Okay. But now we're going to talk a little bit on the how. Okay. Not the how am I stressed or whatever, although that's important too, because everyone responds to stressors differently. Some people are more reactive. Other people internalize more. Usually through internalizing, we end up harming ourselves in the long run because we create someone, how did they put it? They dis-ease, right? So we're the lack of ease, and therefore it can, ultimately, it's not necessarily causational. Yeah, there we go. But the longer we sit in chronic stress, the more it diminishes our immune system and therefore opens us up to illness. Okay. So it's a path. It's a pathway. So managing stress is really important. And that's the how that I'm talking about, right? Because it's similar to telling a child, go to your room and figure it out, or figure out what you did wrong. Well, children, and this is a whole nother tangent, I'm not going to get into child development or parenting or things like that. But children, for obvious reasons, don't typically have that information available to them unless their caregivers provide it, right? With some explanation. So they're learning their environment and what's right and wrong and why and all this other stuff. So when we tell a child to figure it out, sometimes, depending on their developmental stage, that's important because it teaches critical thinking. Other times, they fill in the blanks like we do, and it's not always with helpful information, right? So that's when a child might think, well, I must be the problem, or I'm unlovable, or I'm this or that, or whatever, because they're just trying to make sense of their environment with limited information because their brains aren't fully developed until they're roughly around 25. Okay. So that aside, another metaphor for it would be, excuse me, I just finished eating lunch. Sorry. Another metaphor for it would be telling someone who's drowning to swim better. Hello, right? Because when you're in that amygdala or that emotional place in your brain, it's hard to get to a place of reason, right? So the how, and it's going to differ from person to person as to what your go-to skills are. But one of the things that you can do is get into your frontal lobe area, which is your place of reason. Okay, I'm simplifying it, but this area is your place of reason, rationale, if you will, logic. So doing math, right? Simple math where, because right now, if you're really stuck in your emotional mind and you're stressed, we need to kind of switch the focus, if you will. So depending on your level of stimulation, activation, whatever you want to call it, right? How triggered you are. You might have to start with something very simple like counting ceiling tiles, or find your favorite color in the room and start counting objects that you can find, right? That have that same color in it, or something that you can focus on a little bit that will eventually pull you into it more, which allows you to kind of distract the emotion. Okay. If you're not overly triggered, sometimes it's just creating a new emotion. So maybe watching a comedy, or some funny reels on your phone, or listening to music that induces a different emotion. Because the emotion can lead the thoughts just as the thoughts can lead the emotion. So we determine which rabbit holes we're going down, okay? So those are more of a cognitive way of switching our focus. Another way is a somatic, which is in our body, or how we feel, right? So maybe splashing cold water on your face, or biting into a lemon, right? To stimulate and shock the system in a sense, right? Deep breathing, but breathing can also be stressful for people, because all of a sudden I'm bringing awareness to this automatic system, right? Process that I don't ever have to think about. Now I have to think about it. Now I'm having a hard time breathing, right? So everyone's different. I'm just validating that, because when I first started doing breathing exercises, it was hard for me. It was like all of a sudden now I'm thinking about it, and now my breathing's off, and da-da-da. It takes practice. What do they say? Everything's hard until it's not hard anymore, or difficult, because we learn through repetition, right? So those are some ways. It could be through any of our senses, right? So if we find that olfactory, or our nose is really strong for us, then maybe it's baking cookies, or getting a candle that smells like something that makes you feel safe or feel a certain way. Okay. So we do that through candles. You can do that with incense. You can do that with foods, and anything that you can stimulate a sense, even like after a rainstorm, you go out and you smell that ozone, that fresh ozone, or freshly mowed grass, or being near the ocean if it has salt air, things like that. Whatever stimulates that for you, and replicating that in some way in your environment, because that can help with creating a safe place, right? Eyes, what do we see? Am I looking at chaos, or am I filling my environment with things that make me feel good? Like me, I have my plants and my crystals, and I decorate my house in such a way. I have my roses that I buy every week. It makes me feel a certain way. It creates safety. It creates comfort. It creates happiness for me, right? What does for you? Spend time with that, because those are the things that help us to relax, okay? Right down to, is my mattress working for me, or do I wake up in pain every day, right? Do I have the right firmness? Do I have the right comfort level? Some things we can't solve overnight, because, let's face it, buying a new bed isn't exactly cheap, So sometimes we have to save for things. It's like vacations. Most of us will agree that going on vacation is very beneficial, but not everyone can afford to go on vacation every month or as often as they'd like, right? So some things take other preparation to plan for and create some balance for ourselves. Hearing soothing music. When I'm really stressed, I'll put on some soothing classical music or frequency music, which you can get free frequency music on not Facebook. You probably can there too, but definitely on YouTube. And that can just help. If you run that in the background, that can help with calming, grounding. They have frequency music for everything, right? Which different frequencies align with our different chakra points, which align with different impact. So again, it's all connected, right? So that's more of the somatic or holistic, or somatic. How you can affect your thoughts and your emotions through how the sensations in your body, right? And I did a video on somatic. I don't remember what it was called, but it was 2 years ago, I believe. And it says somatic in the title. I do know that. So when you recognize that you feel a certain way and you know that that's not serving you, it doesn't help to ruminate on that. What helps is when we have tools and ways to be able to feel a different way or think a different way so that we're not stuck. And I have a whole series on stuck too. So when we can see that and be intentional with our choices and mindful in the moment, we take back our power. We take back our control, whatever control is, because that's the only thing we can control to some degree is our reactions or responses to life and our environment. Because we can't control others no matter how hard we try. We can intimidate. We can do things like that, but that's not healthy. That's very toxic. That's never going to be healing. Let's put it that way. That's just projection. It's projecting my fear onto someone else and thinking that I can control how I feel through controlling them or my environment. No. There are certain things, like I said, that we can control about our environment. Like if we like plants and certain decor or things like that, that can really impact our emotions and our thinking. But ultimately, if we're trying to externalize our happy by thinking other people are responsible for how we feel, whether that's security, happiness, love, you name it. It's nobody else's job. All right. And that's hard because that's some programming that's pretty hardwired. Like it's your job to provide and you signed up for this, so you're stuck with it for life. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, we all live and die by our choices. So this video is just to kind of help that in those moments where other people can only provide, by the way, what they're capable of providing for themselves. So someone who says, you're stressed and you need to get over it, usually indicates that they don't know how to get over their own stress. Okay. So from a compassionate point of view, I hold compassion for that person. I don't feel offended anymore. At one point in my life, I would have. But I also recognize not helpful, right? And this is why it's important to have your own toolbox and you play with it. You got to see, because what works on one day may not work on another day, depending on how stimulated you are. Okay. How triggered, how upset, how whatever. It could also be around the topic. So at the end of the day, the what is important as far as being able to have awareness as to what you are trying to do. What am I recognizing and what do I do about it, right? But that's also the how. How do I go about that? Once I can recognize what it is that I'm trying to alter or work with, okay? Because sometimes we can't alter it, but we can alter how we respond to it, right? So that's where we then go into the how. How do I do that? What's going to work for me today? How do I do that, right? And the why is a whole different situation, right? A why is when we have that peace and we feel safe and we can really dig into ourselves to say, why does that trigger me over and over again if we're recognizing a pattern? And what can I learn from that? And how do I go about applying that? I hope that helps. It's a lot. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Again, please like, subscribe, share if you think someone could benefit from that. And I guess that's it. I hope you have a great day and I'll talk soon. Bye.